as a performer and as a producer and as an engineer and as an assistant, we're working together as a team. And although we have responsibilities, there's gray areas, and everybody contributes. I'm not going to go out and sing or perform, but at the same point, we all know what the desire is, and everybody puts in suggestions and thoughts and ideas, and you may give a phrasing or breathing suggestion to a singer that maybe they hadn't thought about, and again, it's not that I'm becoming a performer, but it's just a suggestion and a thought, and it's a team effort. I think that's the thing to remember. It's a group effort, it's a team effort as a performer, engineer, technician, that we were working together to get one result.
Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I'm Sarah Ramsey, and this show aims to pull back the curtain on the entertainment industry, where veterans give up-and-coming artists some of the information they wish they'd had when they were just starting out. Sort of a music industry primer, if you will. Thanks for joining us on the Vocal Lab. This is actually part 2 of our interview. So if you haven't caught part 1 yet, head back to the episode right before this one and get all caught up, and then join us back here. We'll see you soon. Is there anything that you wish artists or clients knew before working with you that would make the whole project smoother or more successful from their point of view? Like what could they come in with being better prepared or doing differently that would contribute to everything working better?
Well, I've been very fortunate because I can't think of many examples when people haven't been prepared. And what I try to do is, from my perspective, I worked on actually a television special not that long ago at the warehouse, interestingly enough. And it was an orchestral recording for this project. And the composer was there and his arranger and whatever, but they hadn't had a lot of recording experience. But they came in, and what I try to do is we do the first run through, and I want to turn around and see smiles in their faces. We were able to do that because they were prepared. They had all of the charts checked and planned and out in the music stands and pencils and all that sort of stuff. So there wasn't anything that could really slow things down. And because we were able to, again, plan the session ahead of time, get basic sounds even before the musicians arrive, as ironic as that sounds, so that the first run through and they can hear, wow. So you get everybody relaxed. You don't want to start the session with everybody really tense like this. So that's my biggest aim. So it's just preparation and making sure that everybody has all the information of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what the final result's going to be.
You have collaborated with a lot of other artists over the years. And do you want to talk about that sort of collaborative aspect of making music and what that really entails from your perspective?
I think there's so many different examples and variables, but I think one of the important things is that, yes, we have individual responsibilities, but at the same point, it's a team effort. As a performer, and as a producer and as an engineer and as an assistant, we're working together as a team. And although we have responsibilities, there's gray areas, and everybody contributes. I'm not going to go out and sing or perform, but at the same point, we all know what the desire is. And everybody puts in suggestions and thoughts and ideas, and you may give a phrasing or breathing suggestion to a singer that maybe they hadn't thought about. And again, it's not that I'm becoming a performer, but it's just a suggestion and a thought, and it's a team effort. I think that's the thing to remember. It's a group effort, it's a team effort as a performer, engineer, technician, that we were working together to get one result.
I think that's a really important perspective. My guess is you have worked at a lot of studios over the years, and probably not just local ones. Do you have any favorites, like favorite recording settings for favorite studios?
Boy, that's an interesting question. As I mentioned earlier, the warehouse is probably one of the best technically maintained and equipped facilities, certainly in Vancouver. It has some issues from my perspective, from an acoustical viewpoint, but as a technical and as a facility I'd like to go to and work with, absolutely, that's one of the top of my list. CBC Studio One is a great facility physically to record in.
Yep.
I don't particularly like the equipment they have there, but it's totally silent. It's in the bowels of the CBC. Absolutely zero sound. You don't hear any air conditioning or rumble or anything. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful location. But even studios I've recorded in Los Angeles, I mean, there's certain things that, wow, this is really nice. And there are things, well, that could be better.
Yeah.
So the one place I would really like to record, of course, is Abbey Road.
Yeah.
I really hope that before I totally hang things up, I'd love to go and do a session there. Hal, Vince, and I have sort of fantasized about maybe doing something there one day.
Yeah. I think that's a real pinnacle. It's that sort of dream goal. It's got so much history to it, right? Abbey Road.
Yeah, and there's some interesting articles on the internet that people can dig up if they're interested in reading about it. It got saved at the last minute. It was due to be pulled down and made into a parking lot.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's some interesting stories that you can look up, and there's actually some footage of one of the first performances in there. Some old vintage footage of the musicians walking in and tapping their music stands as the composer, and his name escapes me from a minute, but he's a famous English composer. This is in the 30s, I think. Land of Hope and Glory, I believe, is the piece they played. Anyway, there's some rich history there, but yeah, it just got saved at the last minute.
Wow. I didn't know that. I will have to go and find some of those articles.
Yeah, I'll send you some stuff if I have.
That would be great. Yeah. You have had a very successful career spanning
Not that long.
Yeah. Spanning more than a few years. But really, honestly, spanning 50 years, that's a huge accomplishment in this business. What do you think creates longevity in this business?
Wow, that's interesting. Well, certainly you have to have a certain amount of luck, and in the right place at the right time, and you have to have opportunities. But when you are given the opportunities, make sure you come through. That it's a responsibility, and it's what we do and what we like to do. But fulfill the responsibilities. But you have to be lucky as well. Yeah. And there are a lot of things, Sarah, that I've never got to do that I'd love to have got to do. So I didn't get everything going my own way. I mean, I was very fortunate in '85 when we recorded the score for Platoon, which won Best Sound and Best Music at the Oscars. And I mean, that should have been or could have been a potential springboard for me to do some other stuff down there and more film work that I didn't do. But I have had some success as well. So I have a lot to be thankful for, but it could have been better as well.
Yeah. What's your bucket list? What are the things that have not, the kinds of projects that have not been put in front of you that you would love to do before, as you said, before you hang it up completely?
I'd like to be spending more time recording music than we are these days. To be perfectly honest, I get to do maybe 4 or 5 projects a year. I'd like the phone to be ringing a little bit more often. I'd like to do some more recording with some studios in Los Angeles or in London, of course. I'd love to do that. And I think I think the other thing is that we all have our own ears and our own techniques. And I mentioned earlier, I do things that seemingly work for me. Mm-hmm. And I try things that I see other people do that don't work for me. And I've seen people try to do things and copy what I do, and it just doesn't sound the same. So I think it's just all these little techniques that all come together. But there's a certain sound that I want to go for, and I listen to some big film scores, and I think, gee, I'd like to have recorded that, because I think I could have made it sound the way I like it to sound.
Yeah,
and that's really the key is to listen to the work that you do. That's your calling card. You can't fool anybody. It's either sounds good or it doesn't.
Yeah,
that's your work.
Yeah. There's
taking
no
a picture and saying this is my work. Well, listen to what I've done, and does that sound okay?
Do you think? I mean, watching up and coming folks in the business, all the different aspects of the business, all the different kinds of work in the business, is there anything that you see where younger people coming up where they're missing something, or they're misunderstanding something that could improve their experience?
Well, one of the biggest things, one of the things I think is a real challenge to me when I listen to a lot of music that is being recorded today, is how the dynamics are not being left alone anymore. Everything is squeezed up and pushed up so it's 98, 99% all the time in music. And I really miss the dynamics, that range. And I talked to Andrew Downton about this, and he hears both sides of the thing. And it's what people expect to hear and how they expect it to be mastered. Mm-hmm. You see, I remember going back, Sarah, when digital first basically came along. When we were recording in analog, there was a certain dynamic range that we had to work with, and there was tape hiss that we had to deal with. So Dolby came up with ways of, noise reduction to control that. So when digital came along, we thought, wow, this is great. Now we don't have to worry about tape hiss anymore. Mm-hmm. And now we can use a bit of dynamics. But what has happened is that everything is sort of being pushed up louder and louder and louder and louder. And although I've been doing this for a long time, I don't 100% understand why, but it's what people expect to hear. And I think it's missing something. I hope we come back to some dynamics. I think because people want to put their tune on, particularly contemporary music, and it sounds louder than the other piece or just as loud. Whereas what's wrong with having something develop?
It's funny. I actually talked to voice students about that concept. I mean, it's not from the recording perspective, but just from a performance perspective, developing a song, and that you don't do the whole song here. There needs to be an arc. There needs to be a development, or you're not telling a good story. And I think it's sort of, you're talking about the sound design version of the same concept, right? That dynamic change helps tell a story.
Yeah, I mean, even in contemporary music, I still see it. Obviously, in classical music, there's dynamics, and there is even but even a lot of country and western music today, they squeeze it up like this, and it's just everything's loud, as opposed to having some shape to it. I think it's missing, but I think
I'm with you on that.
I'm thinking, are you? I'm glad to hear that, because it bothers me, and I don't totally understand it.
So if someone was coming into it, listening to this, thinking, that's awesome, I want to be Roger Monk.
God help you.
I want that career. What would you recommend as a learning pathway for someone getting started from ground zero?
Boy, that's tough. One has to learn to listen and to hear. Mm-hmm. So you need to listen to music and decipher it and pull it out and listen to what you feel is good and what you don't think sounds as good. So you need to be more analytical about the sounds as preparation. I really, really believe in apprenticeship and mentorship, and do whatever you can to make friends with someone that records music that you like and that you respect, and then suck it all in and watch what they do and ask questions. Why did you do that? Or why is this like that? And I remember when I recorded down in LA, we were doing the Buble session. Forgive me, I just can't remember her name now, but it was the harpist. She's the principal harpist in Los Angeles. She goes to all the sound stages and she plays. And she said to me, I introduced myself and said, delighted to work with you. And if there's anything I can do, please, so let me know. I try to make friends with all the musicians. You got to make friends with them, right? You got to have this relationship. It's not us and them, it's us.
Yeah.
And so she said to me, which microphone are you going to use on my harp? And I said, well, I generally use whatever it was. And she said, do you mind trying this? And she gave me this microphone and said, it's what I feel allows the harp to sound the way I hear it when I play. And I said, I can't argue with a lady like that. So we ended up using that. And it's my go-to microphone now.
Interesting.
And I learned from that, and she was totally right and totally correct. And so you have to be open to getting some suggestions and ideas from people that you respect as well. So.
What is the most unexpected way that you feel you've used your talents in the course of your career?
Unexpected, my goodness. Mm-hmm. I think I'm always open to learning things myself. We recorded an interesting project, it's got to be 15 years ago now, called Once Upon a Mattress, which is a musical that people could look up if they wish to.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
And we ended up recording it at the CBC. Mm-hmm. And it was a bit of a challenge because it was a rhythm section and an orchestra. And then the vocalists were coming in prior to going to the North Shore Studios to film it, to record their vocals. And then we'd do a rough mix of the music and then send that over, and they were miming it on the set.
Yeah.
And Carol Burnett was one of the lead singers in the show. And she really impressed everybody because she was so prepared, amazingly professional. She came in, she met my team, and then the next morning she came in to actually record, and she remembered our names, which absolutely blew me away. Ultimate professional. But that was an interesting challenge, Sarah, because it was a rhythm section and an orchestra. So we ended up actually putting the piano, bass, and drums in an adjacent studio with video feeds. And then we had the orchestral elements in the main room. It was an interesting challenge because of the number of people involved, but the charts were so well done, so perfectly arranged. It was a pleasure for them to play. Mm-hmm. And that was, I think, probably what I remember as much as anything was we had to be able to adapt to that. But again, because we were prepared and we tested everything, any little tricks that came along, we had to find solutions to the problems.
Yeah. And this is going to feel like a very basic question, which I know the answer to, but I'm guessing there are people who out there just getting started who don't know the answer to. And do you want to talk about why you put the rhythm section in a different studio than the orchestra?
Well, that's yes. So that there was a little bit of separation. When I record an orchestra, although it's 50, 60, 70 people, whatever it would be, I like to think about it as being one instrument. Mm-hmm. Because there are all these people playing, but this is the sound we're getting. In the case of a rhythm section, particularly where you've got drums, to control the level of the drums if it's in the same room as the band is tough to do.
Mm-hmm.
If they're on stage in a performance like at the Queenie or something, you can control the dynamics, and it is what it is. But we wanted to put them in a separate room so we could control the balance of that rhythm section to the acoustic instruments, so that we weren't getting a lot of drums and bass drum into the flutes or the sensitive instruments. And we were able to keep it separate and control it. I guess that's the main.
That piece of isolation and not having the bleeding, right, of one instrument into a different instrument's microphones.
Exactly. If you could imagine putting a drum set in the middle on the stage at the Queenie, and he's hitting the drum, it's going all over the acoustic, all over the room. You can't turn it off or lower it. I mean, yes, you can get him to play a little bit quieter, but ultimately you want to have a bit of control over the thing, and that's why we did that.
Well, are there any other just great gigs or weird gigs or any fun stories you want?
I won't talk about those right now. I think because you're basically hoping to present us to people that are trying to get into the business, and it's a wonderful job to be in if you can find the work to do it. It's very, very hard today because we don't have the same amount of opportunities. A lot of film scores, for instance, are done electronically. Yeah. And what film scores that are done usually now are kept in Los Angeles for sort of political reasons, whereas once upon a time we used to get some of the overflow, if you will, and if they were concerned about budget, we'd get the opportunities to do it. But even in contemporary music, a lot of people are recording at home. Yeah. You know, and not going into. I remember David Foster saying many years ago at Little Mountain, it was probably the middle 80s, I think. He said, once upon a time, people used to have to do a whole album in a studio like Little Mountain. But now you can go to Little Mountain, you can record your basics. Now we can go to a small studio and we could do maybe some guitar overdubs or some vocals. And then we can go back to Little Mountain to mix. It was the beginnings of being able to record stuff at home. When I first started, you couldn't do that kind of work at home. It had to be done in the studio. Now we've kind of gone a whole 180 degrees, whereas people can actually record a lot of their material on their dining room table at home. Yeah. And never go into a studio. Yeah. They can record it and then into Pro Tools and use their plugins and mix it at home. Yeah. And never even go to a studio. You go back 50 years, you had to go to a studio. Yeah. Yeah, there's a huge shift there. So there's a huge shift. So there aren't the opportunities anymore. But don't give up. But do try and learn from people. Pick someone that you can respect and try and work with them and become their mentors. Yeah, I love that. Well, where can people find you, Roger? I mean, website, social media, things like that. Well, I'm sure that people just, particularly these days, just Google my name and they'll come up with stuff. They'll come up with ways of getting hold of me. But it's difficult. I don't have a lot of time to be able to invite people, but there's a few people that I invite to come to sessions to watch and to learn something. And I just wish people well. It's a tough thing to do. Yeah. But don't give up. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time joining me today. And I just, like I said at the beginning, I've known you as long as I can remember. My childhood, I grew up doing a lot of voiceover work and a little bit of singing work. And I just remember you on the other side of the glass a lot of the time. And so I really appreciate your time and sharing your vast wealth of knowledge. Oh, it's my pleasure. I've known your family, your mum and dad, and your brother, of course, for a long, long time. And I hope we get to do something again. Let's do some recording.
I would love to.
Is Josh planning another album?
He's writing the new Mariana's album right now. So
Great, well,
that's in process.
I hope I get a call from him.
Give him a call and tell him to write something that you get to work on.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Roger.
Okay, you take care. Good to talk to you. Good to see you.